Hello, my name is Peter Harmon, member of the New York Nut Growers Association. I'm making this presentation today on how to sharpen a grafting knife. Because if you're going to graft scion wood onto the stem of some rootstock, you need a razor sharp knife. It can't have any degree of dullness because it has to cut in one motion. It has to be clean. You don't want to go back and make multiple surfaces on the graft scion wood. Now, I want to show you this knife and describe the knife to you in some details. This is approximately 7 inches long. This is a Tina grafting knife. It's made of high carbon steel. You can buy grafting knives that look like pen knives, that they fold, but if you do get that kind of knife, you gotta make sure it has a locking mechanism so the blade can't close on the handle. I like this fixed handle because you have greater control when grabbing it with a full fist. That gives you strength. It doesn't slip out of your hand. The other thing is it's made of high carbon steel, which unlike stainless steel won't rust, but stainless steel can't produce the razor edge that high carbon steel can. Now, I want to show you something else. This is what's called a single bevel blade. The back is dead flat, and I'm going to rotate this knife, and hopefully you'll be able to see some light reflecting off the beveled surface. Okay, so now notice that the blade has a mirror finish. That's what we want. We want to actually sharpen this knife so we end up with a mirror surface. This tool right here, I bought a number of years ago and it cost me $30. They're up to about $70 now. So you need good equipment. Now, when we make a cut for grafting, we're going to slice this with the bevel side down. The idea of a single bevel is you can control the depth of the cut. If you had a double beveled axe head, you really can't control the depth of the cut. I like to work down here towards the bottom of the blade because I have greater control. And you just slice this. What I have here is a piece of heavy rubber that came out of a truck tire in a tube. This acts as a non-slip surface. This is an aluminum cookie sheet, and this prevents this from sliding. What I have here, if we can look closely, these are grit sizes. We have an 800 grit, a 1200 grit, a 4000 grit, and an 800 grit. These grit sizes are the same as like sandpaper or wet and dry sandpaper. They belong to the same abrasive scale. These particular stones are known as water stones. They're soft stones, unlike oil stones. So the lubricant that you put on these stones is water. Whereas if you had an oil stone and you were working with mineral oil or motor oil or kerosene, the problem with those things is it's very messy, it gets on your hands, it doesn't come off your hands easily. So when you grab your knife, you're gonna slip, you have to constantly clean. So water is a very easy cleanup. But there's a little sacrifice that's made because these stones wear. I'm not going to explain this now, but there is another kind of stone that you can get for resurfacing and flattening these stones. Now, so the first thing I've done here is I have two little wooden rests. And the purpose of the rests is to get the stone high enough so I clear the rim of this cookie sheet. Now, why do I want to do that? Because I want to be able to move freely the handle of the blade. As you can see here, the blade now misses the edge of the cookie sheet. The purpose of the cookie sheet is just to collect all the water. You don't use these stones dry. They should be saturated, well wetted. So I'm gonna wet these stones, and a bottle of water really works great because it can carry everywhere with you. All right. These stones, although they call them stones, they're man-made. They're not naturally occurring and mined from the earth. In Japan, they do have water stones that are made out of minerals that are mined from the earth. But there's a limit to, there's inconsistencies in the quality of the stones when you're using natural stones. So what the industry has done is it's been able to fabricate a synthetic water stone. Now, I'm gonna start with the number 800 grit. As you can see, I poured water on this stone now, and it's not absorbing any more water. It's ponded. There's a total reflection off the water. That's what you want. Whereas this stone is still dry. You can see the matte finish of it. I'll pour a little bit more water on this, and eventually it will pond also. Now, when you start, I don't need to flatten the back on this knife because there's no burr. And whatever you do, never rub your hand against the blade. Always rub your hand away from the cutting edge to check it. For a burr, what is a burr? If you were cutting and you hit something hard, or you slipped and maybe you hit the edge of this pan, you might nick this blade and you would develop a metal burr. So you would need to remove that burr. What I'm gonna do is treat this knife right now, although it's already sharp, I'm gonna sharpen it by going through all the grit sizes as if it had never been sharpened before. Now, I'm gonna hold this in hand and I'm going to put my finger on here and I'm going to roll it, I just did, until I can feel that bevel, and I'm resting on that bevel. Now, the idea here, I don't know if you can hear this, but you can certainly feel it. There is that sound, and you can feel the vibration of an abrasive surface scraping the metal. And I'll show you in a moment what that looks like. Okay, you don't want to, I like to go in one direction. If you were to try to cut on the pull stroke, you end up, see my hand? You'd end up rolling the blade and you'd end up with a rounded edge. Whereas what you're looking to accomplish, let me show you on this piece of paper, is this being the back of the blade. This is a sectional view. Oops, you want to create this knife edge right here, where one plane meets the other plane, and there is this tip. And that's gonna be your cutting edge. All right, so go back here. And you'll see an accumulation of what I call a slurry or mud is formed because the stone wears. Now, it's always great to have a piece of paper towel handy. And like I said, you wipe it. And you can see the gray matter there. That's actually metal that's come off of this blade. Now, I can already see there is some striations on this. I can actually see some scratch marks. And if you notice, the blade now looks like it has a larger size bevel. Okay? So then you go back and you just feel it, and I don't really feel a burr. And I look at it straight on and I can't see the edge. That means it's pretty sharp. Those two surface planes are meeting. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go from the 800 grit to, I'm gonna work my way through the series of grits. Now I'm gonna go jump to a 1200 grit, and I'm gonna water my stone again. Now, first thing I'm gonna do, and I can do this, I could draw this to me. This, when I got that big back flat, I can actually sharpen this in both directions, bearing with my two fingers pressing down on the blade, not a rocking motion. My stone went dry. I need a little more water again. All right. Now I'm going to show you what the back of this blade looks like. I don't know if you notice it, but it is no longer polished. It has a matte silvery finish because it's scratched. It's scratched by this coarser grit. Okay, now I'm gonna go to my bevel. You can't just jump from a low grit number to the highest grit number. You have to go through the steps. Okay. Wow. It's looking good. Now I'm gonna go to, from 1,200, I'm gonna go to 4,000. Now I haven't talked to you about the cost of these stones. This pair of stones cost about $70. Somebody might say, oh, $70? $70 for a knife, that's $140. But if you seriously want to graft and do this job right, you're gonna have to make an investment. Now I'm gonna go to the back and flatten this on this 4,000 grit. And I'll show you the back. The back is gonna start to get progressively polished. And I don't know if you can see it, I hope you can. There is a gray water that's forming here on this stone. That's metal, particularly right there, okay? You know it's doing its job. Look at that. You can see all the metal that's come off of there. Look at the piece of paper. All right, it's all metal. Now, I come over here again, and I want to do my bevel. I'm just rubbing away from the blade to make sure there's no metal burr. Okay, I think that's good enough. And if you notice, the back of the knife is lost a lot of its scratch marks. It's getting shinier. Now we're going to jump to 8,000. Wet my stone again. Okay, I start with the back. I can do back and forth here because I got this nice contact with the stone. I don't have to worry about rocking the bevel edge. And the first thing I'm going to show you is how polished the back is going to look. It's going to look like a piece of jewelry. You get that mirror finish. Notice the accumulation of black that's occurring. I know my metal is coming off the blade. Okay, now I'm going to do the bevel. By the way, I'm not pressing hard on this knife. I'm just stroking it. So not gently, but I'm stroking it with firmly so I get a cut. Now I'm just, oh, I can tell that's sharp. Let's see how good it is. I'm going to attempt to shave the hairs on my arm. Oh, there's the hair, okay? Now you're good to go. You know yourself, you got a sharp blade, all right? That's the process. And what I do is after I make my cuts on the cyan wood and I complete a graft, I always go back to the 8,000 stone between cuts. There's no point in letting this blade get dull. If you constantly renew this as you're doing your grafting, you'll keep it sharp. You won't have to go through all the grits again. Once you got it up to speed, you're good. Now, there is, for those purists out there that want the ultimate in a sharpness, oh, you can buy stones of 12,000 and higher. But what we have here is a chromium compound, and I have leather. And I rub this on here. This is a strop. The old barbershop strop kind of thing. So what we do is we're going to take this knife Notice I'm always going one way, pulling away. Let's see what kind of polish. Oh, look at the polish. See that? Even got some moisture there, but it's a nice mirror. And then I come back this way. I don't want to cut into it. I'll drag this bevel this way. And this mild abrasive is going to give you a real razor edge. Now, holding the knife and controlling the cut, I said cut down in here. A dull knife means that a person will push harder on the knife to make the cut. And when you push harder on the knife against the wood, you can slip. And if you catch the tip of this blade, you better get yourself out your bandages and your hydrogen peroxide, because you're gonna have a nasty wound, all right? So I don't have it here, but I'll use this sponge as an example. I take a 2x4 and I rest my cyan wood up against this 2x4 as if it was a backstop. And then I take my grafting knife and I cut against the 2x4. So my hands are protected. I don't get that dip cut that I showed you before. Okay, I get a nice straight cut, and I don't have to worry about slipping with my hand behind it and catching myself and have a bleeder. So that's simple enough. That's what we got to do here. All right, now, what I don't have here is I should have a sheath for this. And a sheath is very easily made. If you took some pieces of cardboard, you fold it, you put this around it, you cut off the excess, you tape it, and then you have yourself a little pocket. Don't ever put this in your pocket. Oh, you'll have a nasty wound. Okay, now that concludes it.